The stars outside looked calm, but inside the ship, something strange waited. Ryan Cole, a lone human pilot, flew a medium-class cargo freighter called the Horizon Wing. He had been flying supplies across the outer colonies for almost 6 years. Always alone, always quiet. That night, space stretched endlessly before him. Black, silent, and endless. But silence can hide many secrets. It started as a soft metallic thud somewhere below the engine deck. Ryan frowned, looking up from the navigation screen. He thought maybe a crate had shifted during turbulence. Cargo sometimes moved when gravity stabilizers flickered. He tapped the console, checked the stabilizers. All normal. Then came another sound, sharper this time, like claws scraping metal. He froze. "Not possible," he whispered, his voice echoing in the empty cockpit. The sound came again, 3 taps, then a low growl that didn't belong on any ship. Ryan reached for his sidearm, an old plasma pistol, and moved quietly down the narrow corridor. Every step echoed through the metallic floor. The lights flickered as he passed the sleeping quarters and approached the cargo hold. He pressed the scanner pad beside the door. Temperature normal. Pressure stable. But there was something odd. A faint life sign reading blinked on the screen. Not 1, not 2, but 3 small signals. Ryan's breath caught. "Stowaways?" he muttered. But deep space routes rarely had any place to hide. He unlocked the door, the heavy panels sliding open with a hiss. Cold air rushed out, smelling faintly of burned circuits and old metal. The cargo hold was dim, lit only by a flickering emergency bulb. Dozens of storage crates were stacked high, strapped and sealed. Ryan listened carefully. Silence. Then a faint whimper. Soft and trembling, he followed the sound to a medium-sized crate near the back, labeled ration packs. Fragile. Something inside shifted. Ryan tightened his grip on the pistol, slowly crouched, and placed his hand on the lid. Another sound came. A soft chirp. Weak and hungry, he hesitated, then pressed the release latch. The lid opened with a slow creak and warm air escaped. Inside, huddled together, were 3 small creatures. At first he thought they were animals. Reptilian, shimmering with faint metallic scales that reflected the light. But then one of them blinked, large, intelligent eyes glowing a faint gold. The smallest one let out a tiny cry, a puff of smoke escaping her mouth. Ryan stepped back in shock. "Dragons?" he whispered, not believing his own eyes. They were no bigger than cats. Their wings folded tightly against their backs, thin tails coiled together for warmth. Their scales looked dull, like they hadn't eaten in days. The eldest, with silver markings across her snout, lifted her head and stared at him. Her eyes were filled with fear, but also understanding. Ryan lowered his weapon, slowly crouching again. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice steady and calm. The eldest hissed weakly, her wings trembling as if ready to protect the others. Ryan noticed empty ration wrappers torn beside them. They had been eating his food. That explained the missing packs. His chest tightened. They were starving, cold, and terrified. He took out a food bar from his pocket and placed it near the crate. The middle one sniffed it, then dragged it closer with tiny claws. All 3 began nibbling fast, their small throats making clicking sounds as they ate. Ryan sat down beside the crate, trying to think. Where did they come from? He hadn't docked anywhere near a living planet for weeks. Then it hit him. His last stop. The abandoned research station near the Vega Belt. It was rumored that scientists there experimented on hybrid species. He remembered seeing damaged containers near his ship during loading. Someone must have hidden them in his cargo to escape. He stared at them again. 3 sisters, maybe. They looked similar. The smallest one had faint blue scales that glowed when she breathed. The middle one's tail had sharp fins, and the eldest carried scars along her wings. They were beautiful, in a strange way. Fragile yet powerful. Ryan's heart softened. He knew the rules. All stowaways or unknown life forms had to be reported to command. But he also knew what command would do. They would take them, lock them in labs, and tear them apart in the name of science. He leaned back, closing the crate slowly, leaving the lid open just enough for air. "Fine," he murmured. "You stay quiet, and I'll pretend I never saw you." He walked back to the control room, trying to steady his thoughts. The readings on his monitor still showed faint life signs. He deleted the logs manually, erasing all traces. Outside, the stars looked peaceful again, but his mind wasn't. That night, as he rested in the pilot's seat, he heard soft movements again. Not scratching this time, but singing. A faint hum echoed through the walls, almost like a lullaby. He looked at the security screen. The 3 little dragons were curled up together, glowing faintly in the dark. The eldest looked toward the camera for a second. Her eyes met his through the screen. Calm, knowing, almost thankful, Ryan turned off the monitor and sighed. He didn't know what he had gotten himself into. All he knew was that his quiet, lonely journey had just changed forever, and somewhere deep in the cargo bay, 3 dragon sisters slept peacefully. Safe, for now, in the belly of a human ship drifting through the endless dark. The next morning, Ryan woke to the hum of the engines and the faint smell of smoke. For a moment, he thought something had caught fire, but then he remembered. The 3 tiny dragons were still hiding in his cargo bay. He rubbed his eyes, sighed, and checked the ship's temperature logs. Normal. Still, his stomach twisted. He had broken every rule in the pilot's handbook. He was carrying illegal life forms, and worse, he was protecting them. Ryan took a protein bar from the storage rack and made his way down the narrow hall. The door to the cargo hold was still locked, but faint heat leaked through the cracks. He pressed the panel and it slid open with a soft hiss. Warm air washed over him, and the smell of burned ration bars hit his nose. "Hey," he muttered, smiling despite himself. "You cooked breakfast without asking me." The smallest dragon, the blue one, chirped in surprise. The middle sister tilted her head, blinking at him, and the eldest, with the silver markings, stepped forward. Her wings half open, she watched him closely. Not with fear this time, but with something sharper. Curiosity. Ryan crouched and held out the food. "You're going to eat me out of supplies if this keeps up," he said. They didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone. The smallest one reached out with her claws and took the bar gently. When she bit into it, tiny sparks of heat came from her mouth. Ryan stared in awe. Their bodies glowed faintly when they ate, like fire refilling a lantern. He tapped his chest. "Ryan," he said slowly, then pointed at the eldest, waiting for a response. For a long moment, she only stared. Then she touched her own chest. "Saris." A soft voice echoed in his mind. Ryan blinked. He looked around, confused. "Did you just—" The voice came again, clearer this time. "Saris." Telepathy, he realized. He pointed at the middle one. "And you?" The reply came weaker, but warm. "Mira." Then the smallest one chirped, her voice tiny and trembling. "Lyra." Ryan felt a strange emotion bloom in his chest. He smiled and nodded. "Saris, Mira, Lyra," he repeated. 3 names that already felt alive in his heart. Lyra waddled forward, placing her small head against his glove. Her scales were hot, but not burning, just warm. Ryan slowly reached out and petted her. She purred, a soft sound like an engine humming in peace. Hours passed as he repaired a loose power conduit. The dragons followed him, watching every move. When a fuse sparked, Mira jumped forward and blew a soft flame, sealing it with melted metal. Ryan stared, amazed. "You're engineers too?" He laughed. Saris tilted her head, eyes shining with pride. They were learning fast. That night, Ryan sat by the observation window with his meal pack. The 3 sisters rested near him, curled like sleeping cats. Stars glittered outside, and the ship drifted quietly through the nebula dust. For the first time in years, Ryan didn't feel alone. He told them stories, simple ones, about Earth, oceans, and sunsets. They listened, their tails swaying softly. When he described rain, Lyra tried to mimic it with small drops of steam falling from her mouth. Ryan laughed so hard the sound filled the cabin. He hadn't laughed like that in years, but peace in space never lasted long. His ship radar blinked red. A message from a Federation patrol. Pilot Cole, respond. Cargo check scheduled for verification. Ryan's blood ran cold. He looked at the dragons. Ceres was already alert, her wings rising defensively. Hide, he whispered. They didn't understand, so he pointed at the vent shaft. Ceres looked at him, then nodded. All three climbed in quickly, squeezing through the small opening, their scales scraping the metal. Ryan shut the vent cover and hurried to the cockpit. The Federation cruiser loomed outside, sleek and silver. Routine inspection, came the voice through the comm. Ryan swallowed hard. Understood. When the boarding team entered, their scanners swept every corner. One soldier paused, frowning at a reading. Sir, extra heat signatures, 3 small. Ryan forced a laugh. Engine exhaust feedback, I've been fixing the stabilizer coils. The officer stared at him for a long second, then nodded. Fine. Keep it clean next time, pilot. When they finally left, Ryan let out the breath he'd been holding. He leaned back against the wall, trembling. He had almost lost them. Later, he reopened the vent. 3 tiny faces peeked out, eyes glowing softly. He smiled. It's okay now. Lyra jumped out first. Landing on his shoulder, Mira followed, curling her tail around his arm. Ceres came last, silent and graceful. Ryan sat down, exhausted. You 3 are trouble, he said softly. Ceres tilted her head and placed her forehead against his arm. A faint voice echoed again in his mind, safe, because of you. Ryan froze, his throat tight. He had spent years drifting through space, delivering boxes and eating in silence now. 3 small creatures had filled that silence with warmth. He looked out the window again. The stars seemed brighter tonight. He didn't know why, but deep inside, he felt that his life had just changed, and that the choice he made to protect them would soon lead to something far greater than he could ever imagine. As the ship floated quietly through the dark, the 3 sisters curled near the glowing engine core. Their scales flickered like small fires. Ryan watched them from the doorway, a faint smile on his lips. Feeding the fire within, he whispered. And for the first time in a long, lonely life, he felt that same fire burning inside him too. The ship drifted through the quiet of deep space, but Ryan Cole couldn't relax. The inspection from the Federation still haunted his thoughts. One mistake, one small noise from the vent, and the 3 dragon sisters would have been taken away. He sat in the cockpit, tapping his fingers on the control board. The stars outside blinked like watchful eyes. He knew they would scan him again soon, maybe even track the heat readings they had found earlier. He had to be careful now, more careful than ever, down below. In the dim cargo hold, Ceres, Mira, and Lyra slept near the engine wall. Their tiny bodies glowed faintly with soft light, breathing in rhythm. Ryan watched them through the small camera screen. They looked peaceful, like sleeping embers waiting to rise again. A strange warmth filled his chest, something close to pride. But there was also fear, a deep fear he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't afraid for himself, he was afraid for them later. When the ship entered the next star sector, a blinking alert caught his eye. A new transmission came through the comms, marked Federation priority. He opened it carefully, and his stomach dropped. To all cargo pilots in the Vega Belt region, 3 escaped biospecimens confirmed missing from Research Station 47, classified. Experimental dragon hybrids. Extreme caution advised. Report any sign immediately. Ryan shut the message fast, his heart pounding. He looked toward the cargo hold and whispered, So it's true. You were part of that. He stood up and walked down the narrow hallway. The door hissed open and warm air brushed against his face. The 3 sisters stirred awake. Lyra yawned with a puff of smoke. Mira blinked sleepily and Ceres rose to her feet. Her eyes glowing gold, Ryan crouched, meeting Ceres's gaze. You were in that lab, weren't you? He said quietly. Ceres didn't speak, but the silence was answer enough. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I can't report you, he said. They'll destroy you. Lyra walked closer, her claws tapping softly against the metal floor. She pressed her warm forehead against his knee, her small gesture full of trust. Ryan smiled faintly, though worry shadowed his eyes. "I'll keep you safe," he promised. But he didn't know how long he could keep that promise. That evening, while running a standard diagnostic, he noticed something strange on the radar, a faint blip following his ship. It wasn't a large vessel, but it stayed exactly in his blind spot. "Shadowing me," he muttered. He dimmed the lights and switched the ship into low-power mode. He didn't want to draw attention. The dragons sensed his tension, their eyes glowing softly as they looked up. Saris tilted her head, her voice echoing gently in his mind. "Danger?" Ryan nodded. "Maybe." Hours passed. The shadow on the radar stayed distant but constant. Ryan decided to take a risk. He altered his flight path toward a dense nebula where scanners failed. Inside, the light turned orange and purple, and static crackled through the comms. The ship trembled as it entered the thick cloud of dust and plasma. The dragons huddled near Ryan, sensing his unease. He whispered, "Hold on tight, we're hiding in the storm." Suddenly, alarms flared. An unauthorized signal burst through the static. "Pilot Cole, this is Federation Patrol 27. You are off your route, respond." Ryan froze. He knew the scanners wouldn't work here, but the signal was strong. They must have tracked him before he entered the nebula. He grabbed the comm mic, forcing calm into his voice. "Patrol 27, this is Horizon Wing. Adjusting course due to engine temperature fluctuation. Over." A pause followed, heavy and long. Then came the reply, "Transmit internal readings for verification." Ryan's heart sank. If he sent the readings, they would see 3 extra heat sources on board. He looked at Saris. She stared back. Eyes steady and bright. He thought fast, switching the sensor data manually. He rerouted the signals to make it look like engine heat pockets. Fingers trembling, he sent the falsified data. Minutes passed in silence. Then the patrol replied, "Readings received. Maintain your route. Do not deviate again." Ryan exhaled sharply. His chest burning from holding his breath, he leaned back and laughed softly. That was close, too close. When he looked up, Saris was still watching him. Her voice brushed softly in his mind. "You protect us again," he smiled tiredly. "Yeah, and now you owe me one," Lyra chirped. Climbing onto his lap, her tail wrapping around his arm, Mira blew a tiny puff of smoke toward his face. Ryan chuckled. Okay. We're even." Later that night, he couldn't sleep. He sat by the observation window, staring at the swirling nebula. The ship's hull creaked softly, and the faint hum of the engines filled the silence. He thought about the Federation's labs, about the cruelty behind their research. He had seen it once. Cages, test chambers, machines built to strip life down to numbers, and now, those same people were chasing 3 small beings who only wanted to live. He looked down at them, sleeping peacefully near his feet. Lyra's small wings twitched as she dreamed. Mira's tail flicked. Saris's glow dimmed and brightened with her breath. Ryan whispered, "I won't let them find you." He knew he couldn't turn back now. He was already a criminal in their eyes. But something deep in his soul told him that protecting them was right. Outside, the nebula began to fade as the ship emerged into open space again. The stars stretched before them, vast and endless. Ryan adjusted the controls and smiled faintly. For the first time, he felt like his ship had a purpose, not just carrying cargo, but carrying life. He didn't know what waited ahead. But one thing was certain: he would lie, fight, or even burn if it meant keeping his new family safe. And somewhere in the quiet dark, a voice whispered softly into his mind, "Thank you, human." He didn't answer, but a small smile stayed on his face as the ship drifted toward its next unknown dawn. Days passed quietly inside the Horizon Wing. The engines hummed like a heartbeat through the metal hull. Ryan Cole had fallen into a strange rhythm, part pilot, part caretaker, part friend. He no longer saw the 3 dragon sisters as cargo or hidden trouble. They had become something else entirely, the first warmth in his life after years of cold space. Every morning, Lyra would greet him with soft chirps as soon as he stepped into the cargo bay. Her wings shimmered faint blue like moonlight underwater. Mira would follow behind, more cautious, her sharp fins twitching as she watched him work. And Saris, the eldest, always stayed a little apart, proud, quiet and watchful. Ryan liked that about her. She was like the captain of her small family, and he respected her more than most humans he'd ever met. He had started talking to them while repairing the ship. He knew they couldn't understand all his words, but somehow they listened better than anyone ever had. "You know," he said one day, tightening a bolt under the panel, People used to say space is lonely, but now I think they just weren't looking in the right places. Lyra tilted her head, eyes wide and curious. She didn't know the meaning of lonely, but she understood the tone, the quiet ache in his voice. She climbed onto his shoulder and rubbed her snout against his cheek. Ryan smiled. Your trouble, you know that? Later, while checking the power grid, he noticed a coolant leak near the engine core. The pipe hissed dangerously, steam filling the air. He tried to close the valve, but it was jammed tight. Suddenly, Cirrus stepped forward, spreading her wings. Her eyes flashed bright gold. She breathed a narrow line of blue fire across the pipe. Melting the crack shut, the leak stopped instantly. Ryan stared in disbelief, then laughed. You just saved me hours of work, he said. Wiping sweat from his brow, Cirrus didn't answer, but a faint flicker of pride glowed in her chest. That night, they all sat near the observation window. The nebula outside shone in shades of silver and purple. Ryan opened a small music file on the console. Soft piano filled the cabin, a tune from Earth. Slow and sad, Mira listened closely, her tail tapping in rhythm. Lyra's wings fluttered like she was trying to catch the sound. Cirrus simply watched Ryan, her golden eyes reflecting the stars. He smiled. It's called music. We used to play it when we missed someone. Lyra chirped softly, as if asking, who do you miss? Ryan hesitated, then said, no one left to miss. For a long time, none of them moved. Only the sound of space filled the air, deep, endless, and strange. Ryan realized then that the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full, and full of life, warmth, and something he hadn't felt in years. Hope days turned into weeks. The dragons grew stronger, their scales brighter, their eyes clearer. They learned small human words: food, sleep, and safe. Ryan laughed every time they tried to mimic his accent. He started keeping a log of their growth. He measured their wingspan, their flame color, and even their unique hum frequencies. It wasn't science anymore. It was affection. He was documenting family. But not everything was peaceful one evening. While running a systems check, Ryan found a red warning flashing. Data ping detected. Transmission attempt from unknown source. He froze. He checked the signal path. It came from the lower deck, near the communications relay. When he reached the spot, he saw the three dragons staring at the blinking panel. Lyra had pressed one of the glowing buttons out of curiosity. Ryan rushed forward and killed the power. The light faded, but his stomach turned cold. Did anyone receive that signal? He whispered. He scanned the logs. A partial transmission had gone out. Coordinates and all. Someone might have seen it. Cirrus looked guilty. Lowering her head, Ryan sighed. Rubbing his face, it's not your fault. You didn't know. He sat down beside them, trying to calm his thoughts. They'll find us if they track the signal, he said quietly. Mira nuzzled his arm, sensing his worry. Lyra chirped softly. Safe, safe. Ryan smiled faintly. Yeah, we'll stay safe. The next day, they worked together to reshield the ship. Cirrus helped melt down extra hull plating. Mira used her claws to shape the metal. Lyra carried tools one by one in her mouth, proud of every small job she did. Ryan watched them work and felt a strange comfort. He wasn't just fixing a ship anymore. He was building a home that night when everything was quiet again. Ryan sat in the cockpit recording his journal. Day 27, he said softly. Dragons continue to adapt well. They learn faster than any species I've met, and they've changed me too. He paused, looking out the window. I don't feel alone anymore, he whispered. Then he switched off the recorder and smiled. Behind him, Cirrus walked in quietly, her wings folded neatly. She climbed up onto the seat beside him and looked at the stars. Beautiful, she said slowly, her voice forming real sound for the first time. Ryan turned to her, eyes wide. You can speak? Cirrus nodded slightly, her voice rough but clear. Learning. From you? Ryan laughed softly, shaking his head. Well, you're doing better than most humans already, he said. Cirrus tilted her head, a hint of a smile in her glowing eyes. Outside, the stars passed by in endless rivers of light. Inside, a strange new family watched together. A man who had lost everything, and three small dragons who had never known safety. Somewhere between the hum of the engines and the soft glow of their scales, they found something rare in the cold dark. Not survival. Not duty, but belonging. Ryan didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but as Cirrus rested beside him and Lyra and Mira curled together in sleep, He whispered to the stars, "This ship isn't just mine anymore." And for the first time in years, the words felt right. He wasn't alone, not anymore. The night in deep space was never truly dark. Stars glowed like cold embers, and the nebula around the horizon wing shimmered faintly in blue. Ryan Cole leaned back in the pilot seat, half asleep. The steady hum of the engines almost a lullaby. The past few days had been peaceful, too peaceful. Even Saris had started to relax. Her wings folded neatly as she watched Lyra and Mira play with a ball of light near the power core. Ryan smiled, but the unease in his chest never left. Peace in deep space never lasted long. A sudden alert broke the calm. The radar blinked red. Multiple heat signatures detected. Ryan sat up fast, his heart hammering. Unregistered ships approaching. 4 of them. The console spoke in a calm female voice. He checked the coordinates. They weren't Federation patrols. The ships were smaller, faster. Mercenary models. Ryan cursed under his breath. They found us. Sarah sensed the change in his tone and looked up sharply. "What wrong?" she asked, her English still slow but clear. "Visitors," Ryan said grimly. He switched the ship to stealth mode, dimming lights and cutting non-essential systems. The sisters crouched low, their scales glowing faintly in the dark. Through the cockpit window, Ryan saw 4 small ships circling like predators around a wounded beast. They were bounty hunters. He knew the type. Men who'd chase anything for credits, especially if the target was rare. A voice crackled through the comm. "Unregistered vessel Horizon Wing. This is Commander Cray of the Syndicate Hunters. You are carrying stolen property. Hand it over, and we'll let you live." Ryan felt cold anger in his chest. He opened the channel, keeping his tone calm. "There's nothing here for you," he said. The reply came fast, laced with laughter. "We've got your signal logs, Cole. 3 life forms from Station 47. Turn them in, or we take them by force." Ryan shut the comm. His jaw tight, he turned to the dragons. "Listen, all of you hide in the maintenance bay." Now Sarah shook her head. "We stay." "Sarah's?" I said. Her eyes flashed gold. "We stay," she repeated firmly. Ryan met her gaze, saw the fire in it, and realized arguing was useless. He sighed. "Fine, but don't do anything stupid." The first blast hit the ship a second later. The hull shook violently, alarms blaring through every deck. Ryan gripped the controls, trying to stabilize the freighter as explosions rocked its side. "They're trying to disable us, not destroy us," he muttered. He switched on the defense turrets, but the ship wasn't built for combat. 3 hits later, the power flickered, and gravity failed for a moment. Ryan floated upward, his tools scattering in the air. Then another blast tore through the corridor near the cargo bay. He grabbed his helmet and ran toward the back. Smoke filled the hall, red lights flashing across metal walls. He heard movement, footsteps not his own. Mercenaries had boarded. Ryan ducked behind a bulkhead and aimed his blaster. The first man appeared, armored and masked. Ryan fired once, the plasma shot hitting his chest. The merc fell with a loud clang, but 2 more followed. Ryan took cover and returned fire, his shots lighting the corridor. He was outnumbered. "Come on, Ryan," he whispered. "Think." Then from the shadows a soft hiss filled the air. A low growl followed, not mechanical, not human. Flames burst through the smoke as Saris charged forward, wings wide, her roar shaking the metal walls. The mercenaries froze. Eyes wide with disbelief, Lyra and Mira followed, their small forms blazing like living comets. Lyra breathed a stream of blue fire across the floor, forcing the men back. Mira jumped from a pipe and slashed through a soldier's armor with her claws. Ryan stared, stunned. They moved together like a single force, fire, light, and steel dancing in perfect rhythm. One mercenary fired a grenade, but Saris caught it midair with her claws. She looked at it, her eyes burning, and crushed it into molten scrap. Ryan took the opening and shot the last attacker before he could reload. Silence filled the corridor again, broken only by the sound of flames fading. Smoke drifted up toward the ceiling. The dragons stood among the wreckage, their scales glowing faintly gold and blue. Ryan lowered his weapon slowly. You saved me," he said quietly. Lyra blinked, her tail flicking proudly. Mira walked to him and nudged his arm. Sarah stared at the fallen mercs, her voice soft but steady. "They hurt family," she said. Ryan looked at her, and for a moment he couldn't speak. Family? She had said it like it was the most natural word in the universe. He smiled weakly. "Yeah, They did, but the danger wasn't over. Another warning flashed across the console. Enemy reinforcements inbound. 30 seconds, Ryan looked at the dragons. We can't fight all of them, he said. We need to run. He rushed back to the cockpit and powered up the thrusters. The ship's frame groaned, sparks flying from the damaged hull. Ceres and her sisters climbed beside him. Hold tight, he said, the engines roared, and the Horizon wing shot forward into the darkness. Laser fire streaked behind them. Lighting the void in bright flashes, Ryan weaved through debris. Dodging shot after shot, the dragons cried out, their wings spreading as they helped balance the ship with bursts of flame from the vents. Finally, they dove into a nearby asteroid field. Rocks tumbled around them as Ryan maneuvered between them. Scraping metal, a blast hit their rear engine, but they kept moving. At last, the radar cleared. No pursuit, no signals, only silence. Ryan slumped in his seat. Breathing hard, his ship was battered, his body bruised, but they were alive. He turned to the dragons, Ceres's scales dimmed. Mira's tail was cut and Lyra was trembling. He reached out and touched Ceres's shoulder gently. Thank you, he said, his voice low. She looked at him, her eyes soft. You saved us first, she whispered. Outside, the stars drifted silently by. Inside, 4 survivors sat together in the flickering light of a damaged ship. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was forged in fire. Ryan looked out at the endless void ahead and whispered, Let them come again. We're not afraid anymore. And somewhere deep in the ship, the dragon's faint hum echoed through the metal, a song of fire, family and defiance against the cold, endless dark. The Horizon wing drifted through the silence of deep space, scarred and wounded. Smoke still rose from the damaged panels, and half the lights flickered weakly. Ryan Cole sat in the cockpit, sweat streaking his face, hands trembling from exhaustion. He had fought mercenaries, dodged death, and somehow kept the ship flying. But now that the battle was over, the real struggle began: survival. He glanced at the power readings: fuel levels low, oxygen filters damaged, reactor overheating. Every warning light on the dashboard blinked red. He hit the console in frustration. Come on, don't die on me now. From behind, a soft chirp answered. Lyra's small voice. She peeked out from the corridor. Smoke stains on her wings, eyes tired but bright. Ryan smiled weakly. Hey kiddo, you did good back there. Mira followed her, limping slightly, a streak of black soot across her silver scales. Ceres came last. Her expression calm, but her wings half-burned. They had saved him, but at a terrible cost. Ryan stood and went to check the engine room. The heat hit him like a wave, the air thick with smoke. He coughed, covering his mouth with his sleeve. The reactor core pulsed erratically, flickering in and out of stability. He knew if it failed completely, they'd all freeze in hours. He began reconnecting the damaged cables, his hands shaking. Ceres, he called, I need your help. She stepped forward, her golden eyes glowing faintly. He pointed at the ruptured plasma conduit. You think you can melt that shut again? Ceres nodded silently, drawing in a deep breath. Her wings shimmered and she breathed a thin, controlled stream of blue flame. The metal hissed and sealed tight, but the effort drained her. Her legs trembled, and she collapsed against the wall. Ryan rushed to her side. Hey, easy. Don't push yourself, Mira moved to help. Using her claws to reroute the power lines, Lyra climbed onto the control panel, pressing the restart key just as Ryan had taught her. The reactor came back online, lights flickering bright again. Ryan exhaled, relief flooding his chest. Then he noticed the dragon's scales dimming, their natural glow fading. What's happening? He whispered. Ceres opened her eyes weakly. We used too much fire. Ryan's throat tightened. You burned your energy to save me? She gave a faint nod. Our wings, empty now. He stared at them. The truth sank in like ice. Their wings, once alive with glowing veins of light, now hung lifeless. They had burned their inner cores, the source of their flight. To restart his ship, Ryan clenched his fists, guilt heavy in his chest. You shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. You could have died. Ceres looked up at him, her voice faint but calm. You live, so we live. He turned away, blinking fast, trying to hide the tears. Hours passed as the ship continued its slow journey through the void. Ryan patched the hull with whatever materials he had left. He fixed air leaks, sealed burnt panels, and adjusted navigation manually. Each movement was heavy, but the thought of giving up never crossed his mind. In the corner of the cargo bay, the three sisters rested. Lyra's breathing was slow, Mira's tail twitched weakly, and Sarah sat still, eyes closed. They looked fragile, like dying stars in the dark. Ryan sat beside them quietly. He pulled off his gloves and reached out, touching Sarah's shoulder. Her skin was warm, pulsing faintly. "I should have protected you better," he said softly. Sarah shook her head. "You did," he smiled faintly. "You know," he said, "back on Earth we had creatures called phoenixes. They burned to ashes but always came back stronger." Lyra's small eyes opened, curiosity glowing faintly. "Phoenix?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah, like you. Fire that never gives up." Mira gave a small chirp. As if trying to mimic the word, Sarah smiled faintly. "We rise again," she whispered. For the first time in days, Ryan laughed. Even in exhaustion, even in pain, their spirit was unbroken. That laugh gave him strength to keep working. He moved to the cockpit, checking the scanners again. No signs of pursuit. No Federation pings, only the endless. Quiet stars, but one reading caught his eye. A nearby planet. Atmosphere thin but breathable, covered in green and blue patches. A hidden world uncharted. He stared at the map and whispered, "Maybe this is where we start over." He returned to the cargo bay and crouched beside the dragons. "Hey," he said gently, "how do you feel about a planet with real wind, real sky?" Lyra chirped softly. Mira blinked with interest. Saris opened her eyes, tired but hopeful. "A home?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah, maybe a home." He guided the ship toward the planet, its surface slowly growing in the viewport. Atmosphere readings were rough, turbulence high, but safe enough. "Hold on," he said, gripping the controls. The ship shook as it entered the upper layers, wind roaring against the hull. The sisters held tight to the seat frames, their small claws digging into the metal. For a moment, lightning flashed outside, blue and wild. Then they broke through the clouds. Below them stretched forests, rivers, and mountains covered in silver mist. Ryan stared in awe. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Sarah smiled faintly. "Free," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. He landed the ship in a quiet valley, surrounded by glowing trees and soft streams. When the hatch opened, fresh air rushed in. Lyra was the first to step out, her tiny feet touching real soil for the first time. She looked up at the sky and chirped loudly, spinning in circles. Mira followed, dipping her tail in the nearby water and laughing in her strange melodic voice. Ceres stepped out last, closing her eyes as wind brushed over her wings. Ryan watched them, a deep calm settling in his chest. For the first time there were no alarms, no threats, no orders. Just the sound of nature, the sound of freedom. He sat on a rock near the ship, watching the dragons explore their new world. His ship was broken, his future uncertain, but as Ceres looked back at him and smiled softly, he knew it didn't matter. They were alive and they were together, and that to him was the real victory. The price of freedom had been high. Their wings, their strength, their past, but what they gained in return was priceless. As the sun set behind the alien mountains, Ryan whispered to himself, "Home," and three glowing shapes rested beside him. The human and his dragons, survivors of fire, now reborn under a sky that finally belonged to them. Morning came gently to the hidden valley. The twin suns rose over the mountains, painting the sky in gold and crimson. For the first time in years, Ryan Cole woke not to alarms or ship noise, but to the sound of wind and distant rivers. The horizon wing sat half buried in grass and moss, a wounded bird finally at rest beside it. The three dragon sisters stirred from sleep, their scales catching the sunlight like jewels of living fire. Lyra was the first to run into the open field. She spread her small, damaged wings and tried to flap them. They twitched but didn't lift. Still, she laughed in her chirping voice. Mira chased after her, her tail swaying. Ceres stood on a ridge nearby, watching them, her expression calm and proud. Ryan leaned against a rock, a faint smile on his tired face. He hadn't seen peace like this in years. For days, they lived quietly in the valley. Ryan repaired what little he could on the ship, mostly for shelter and power. He built small huts using pieces of the cargo crates. The dragons helped him gather food and water. Lyra learned to dig up glowing fruits that grew beneath the soil. Mira hunted small metallic insects that sparkled like silver dust. Saris found an old cave near the cliffs, warm and deep, a perfect home for nights when the cold winds howled. They were surviving, but not running anymore. One evening, as the suns dipped behind the mountains, Ryan sat near a campfire made from alien wood. The flames burned blue and green. He looked up at the sky, so vast and unfamiliar yet strangely welcoming. The dragon sat close to him. Lyra curled at his feet, Mira resting her head on his knee and Saris beside him. They watched the stars appear one by one. Ryan said softly, "You know, humans have a saying. When we find peace, we build dreams." Lyra tilted her head. "Dreams?" Ryan smiled. "Yes, dreams. Things we hope for even when they seem impossible." Saris blinked slowly. "What dream you build?" He looked into the fire. "To stay free. And to see you all fly again." Saris lowered her gaze, her voice faint. "Our wings. Gone." Ryan shook his head. "Maybe. Maybe not." He looked at the ship behind them, the broken hull, the melted engines. "Maybe I can fix something," he said. Mira chirped softly, her eyes shining. "Fix wings?" Ryan smiled. "Maybe." Over the next few days, he worked tirelessly. He used leftover reactor plates, power cells, and wire mesh to build small metallic harnesses. His hands bled from the effort, but he kept going. The dragons helped, bringing materials, holding tools, watching closely. When he finally finished, he had made 3 small wing frames, light, mechanical, and covered with reflective alloy. They weren't real wings, but they were something. He carried them outside and placed them in the grass. Lyra sniffed at hers curiously. Mira tapped hers with her claws. Saris just stared at hers silently. Ryan said softly, "Try them." He helped attach each frame, adjusting the straps and energy cords. The small devices hummed as they powered up. Blue lights flickered along the edges. Lyra stepped forward first, her little body trembling with excitement. She jumped, and for a brief moment the mechanical wings caught the wind. Lifting her off the ground, Ryan's heart leapt. She hovered only a few seconds before landing again, but her laughter echoed through the valley. Mira followed, spreading her new wings wide. She flew a little higher, wobbling, then circling clumsily in the air. Saris watched in silence before finally stepping up. Ryan adjusted her harness carefully. "You don't have to," he said. She met his eyes. "I want to." She walked to the edge of the cliff and looked down at the valley below. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and distant thunder. Ryan stood behind her. "Whenever you're ready," he said softly. Saris spread her wings, mechanical parts humming. Blue fire sparking from her scales, then she jumped for a heartbeat. She dropped, then caught the air, rising higher. Her wings blazed with light. "Half metal, half flame," Ryan shouted. "Yes!" Lyra and Mira cried out from below. Their voices filled with joy. Saris circled above them. Her body glowed like a burning comet across the twin suns. In that moment, she wasn't broken. She was reborn. When she landed, her legs wobbled, but her eyes shone. She looked at Ryan and said quietly, "We fly again." He nodded, his throat tight. "Yeah, you do." For a long time, none of them spoke. The only sound was the wind whispering through the valley. Ryan sat down beside them, staring at the horizon. "You know," he said softly, "the Federation's probably still out there. They'll come one day, maybe soon." Saris looked at him calmly. "Then we fight again." Ryan smiled faintly. Together, Saris nodded, always that night. As darkness covered the valley, the 4 of them sat around the fire again. The dragons sang softly, their voices strange and beautiful. It was the same song Ryan had once heard through the ship walls, but now it was full of strength and hope. He closed his eyes and listened. For the first time, he didn't feel like a lost pilot. He felt like he belonged, a human who had found his family among stars and flame. As dawn rose again, Ryan stood on the hill and looked toward the open sky. Lyra flew past him, laughing. Mira followed in graceful arcs. Saris rose last, her wings spreading wide. Catching the new light, the sky blazed with color, gold, blue and red, Ryan whispered to himself. A sky of fire and promise. He raised his hand, waving as the 3 sisters flew higher. Their shapes shimmered against the sun, not as experiments or fugitives, but as free beings and alive, unbroken, and deep inside his heart. Ryan knew he'd found what he was searching for all along. Not just freedom, but purpose and a family forged from fire, under a sky that would remember them forever.